다들 수면 내시경 해보셨을 겁니다. 호흡하자마자 잠들어 버리죠. 이 메커니즘을 적용시켜버린 수면 제품.
I said on that day, which meant on Tuesdays. So ever since then, all these years, I remain a vegetarian
on Tuesdays. What's been the high point of what you wanted to do that you finally got done?
Never used to go on holidays before. Now, post 2009, every year I would go on a holiday, every year. If you ask me what is the only regret I have, one regret I have in life, you know, my mother was always with me and I was very close to my mother. And then the last 1 year, which was 1999, she got a stroke. And I don't think I spent as much time with her as I would have liked.
How would you like to be remembered?
Simple, straightforward, humble, easy with wanting to help people. Very seriously.
That's Keki Mistry in a nutshell. So cute.
Oh, no, are you scared of dogs?
No. Lovely to see you. Joining me now on the leadership language is the man himself, Keki Mistry. Mr. Mistry, what an absolute pleasure to have you join us on the leadership language.
Pleasure being with you, sir.
Let me walk you back to 1981, 12th October specifically, when you decided. When you
12th
decided,
October 1981.
1981. That's when the HDFC journey began, and you could have gone to Citi. That was a very real option, a very real possibility for you. What made you want to join this fledgling startup?
So, you know, I started working with Indian hotels. My first job was with Indian hotels. That was a very short period of time, about a year and a half. And I prepared the accounting manual for Taj, which I believe they used for many years after I left. But then Taj wanted me to go to Goa as a chief accountant. I didn't want to do that, so I was looking for a good job in India, in Mumbai. And then I got 3 offers. So I got an offer from HDFC, which was a very tiny little organization in those days, very small. I got an offer from Citi, and I got an offer from one multinational entity. I chose HDFC because I just loved the culture. I went for an interview. I met Deepak. I met our general manager. In those days, we used to call him general manager, a gentleman named Nagendra. I met a gentleman named Deepak Satwalekar. And I just loved the atmosphere, the informal atmosphere, the very casual, the very, very friendly kind of a work environment which existed. And then I similarly went to Citi and I saw it was a gigantic organization. And I thought I would be just one out of
cog in the wheel.
A cog in the wheel, absolutely. So I decided I would join HDFC. But very honestly, when I joined, I never thought I would work there for 42 years, which is what I did.
Yes, 42 years, and what a journey it has been, not just for you, but for HDFC and for housing finance in the country. I mean, a world of a difference in how we've seen this story evolve. But, going back to the fledgling startup that HDFC was, everyone today talks about the successes. Everyone today talks about, the numbers that tell the story of the growth and the evolution. But let's talk about what it was actually to create this category in India, the many challenges that you had to contend with to make this category a viable one in India.
So I'll tell you some of the challenges. Obviously there were challenges along the way. You can never get to 100% success without some failures, some challenges, some bumps along the way. I'll tell you the first and the biggest challenge we faced was we started early. We had a capital of 10 crores and the share value was 10 rupees. The par value was 100 rupees a share. And for an endless number of years, the share was trading at about 70 rupees, 75 rupees, 80 rupees, 90 rupees, always below par for some reason or the other. 70 was the low.
I mean, the IPO struggled as well.
Yeah. So that was the capital. We used up the 10 crores of capital in giving loans. And then obviously we needed funding. I mean, housing loan is all about giving money to people.
Yeah.
So how do you give money if you don't have money? So we had to borrow money. And nobody in India wanted to lend us money because the concept of housing finance did not exist in India. In fact, the concept of retail lending was very, very new or hardly ever, was practiced in India. So no banks would lend us money. No institutions were willing to lend us money. Obviously, we couldn't get deposits from the public at that time. So we got our first breakthrough when we got a 10 crore rupee loan from LIC. And that, I think, was a turning point for us. But along with that 10 crore loan, we also got a $4 million loan from IFC. the International Finance Corporation, Washington. That turned out to be the costliest loan we ever got, because in those days there was no way of hedging foreign exchange risk. And when we got the loan, that number is still etched in memory. The exchange rate was $12.56064 for 100 rupees, equivalent to 7 rupees 96 paisa a dollar. The loan, when we paid it back, or we had to pay it back in installments, the last installment was paid when the exchange rate was about 18 rupees to a dollar, 1.8. The loan was very important to us because that loan, along with the loan from LIC, gave confidence to the Indian banking system to start providing us with funding. And frankly, after that, there really wasn't too many challenges we faced. A little bit of challenge in 2008, 2009, global financial crisis. Liquidity had completely sucked out of the system. Funding was very difficult. Interest rates were very high. But 2008, 2009, we started getting wholesale funding at a higher rate, but we were managed to bring it down through a variety of measures, and we survived that period. So challenges along the way. Another challenge would have been 91, 92.
Right.
91, 92, India was in a difficult situation. You may remember we had to pledge gold to come out of a foreign exchange risk. Interest rates in India were extremely high. The funding that we would have got from banks would have cost us 17 and 18%. And that is the time we switched to retail deposits. And in those days, today you may find this, unbelievable. But in those days, when companies accepted deposits from the public, it would take them 3 months, 4 months to issue a deposit receipt. Now, many of the people who were placing deposits were old people, people who had retired, and they just wanted the confidence of getting that piece of paper. Nothing in those days was automated, so you needed to get that piece of paper confirming the fact that this was a deposit that you had placed with that company. And it could take 3-4 months to get the deposit. So we said we will initiate a system where we will provide deposits across the counter. So you come, you place the money with us, you give us the check or whatever it is, and within 2 minutes or 3 minutes, we would give you a deposit receipt. And then we had control systems in place to ensure that those service standards were met. So that became an instant success. And then we were able to get retail deposits at a significantly lower rate than what wholesale money would have cost us, which enabled us to continue giving housing loans with roughly a spread of around 2%.
One of the opportunities, but also the challenge of a category creator is the fact that there is no template. You've got to create the template. And in many ways, HDFC did that for the housing finance market, building out this category, ensuring that trust was created with the customer to actually avail of a home loan. I mean, what did it take to be able to do that, to deliver on that promise when it didn't exist?
Yeah, I'll tell you something very interesting. In those days, today people borrow money
at the top of the hat. Yeah.
So people even borrow money sometimes to go on a holiday or to do anything, any personal stuff. In those days, borrowing was considered not a very good thing to do. There was a little bit of a social stigma, if I may say, associated with borrowing money. So we used to actually sometimes get people coming to our office with a mask on their face and wearing a cap because they didn't want to be seen in HDFC, where obviously they would be
to borrow money.
So we actually had created in those days these little cubicles. So if someone was uncomfortable being seen in the open, then for his meeting with whoever the credit appraiser was, he would be taken into that little cubicle so he would not be seen by people. See how India has changed. The India of 1981 and the India of 2025 is so dramatically different.
Dramatically different. But you talked about the stigma attached to
borrowings.
And then we swung the other way, where you saw borrowing which was out of control. There was easy money because of low interest rates or zero interest rates, specifically globally, and that led to its own kind of toxic behavior, its own kind of toxic mess, which has taken a fair amount of time to deleverage from balance sheets to clean up. The pendulum swung from the stigmatization of borrowing to excessive borrowing. I mean, and you watched that journey.
Yeah. No, so Shireen, that is, honestly, even today, people borrow money in India with a lot of ease and are happy to borrow money. But let me tell you one thing. Even today, when someone takes a housing loan, it's the single largest loan that is taken to buy the single biggest asset of his lifetime. And you will still find that a majority of people will come back before time and start making part or full prepayments of the loan. So it's not that people are prepaying loans because interest rates are high or interest rates are low.
They just want to get it off.
They just want to get that liability off their car. And even today, the average Indian is still very, very conscious about how much money he borrows. So whilst there will be a willingness in the younger generation to borrow money for, doing a whole lot of other things, still you will find that people in their 30s and 40s generally would be a lot more cautious in terms of the amount of money that they borrow. It's not like the Western world. You see, social media, the influence of social media is, I think, one of the factors which has made Indians a lot more bolder in terms of meeting their aspirations, borrowing money to meet those aspirations compared to what they would otherwise have. But still, there's far, far greater discipline in an average Indian borrowing money compared to someone in the West.
Yes, and also the savings mentality and the savings mindset is very much in the minds of the consumer. you've been one of India's foremost CFOs, awarded several times across different sectors for the contribution that you made as a CFO. What would your advice be to CFOs who are watching this program? And I know you're a numbers man. I mean, you displayed that very effectively at the start of the program. That is your superpower, isn't it?
I love numbers. I mean, I've always said from childhood I've had a fondness of numbers.
And you were telling me that your grandmother insisted that you should either join the central bank or the
So, when
charters.
I'm a Parsi, there are very few Parsis left in this world. There are what, some 60 or 70,000 Parsis in the whole world. So my grandfather, who came from the old school, when I was young, when I was 6 years, 7 years, 8 years old, said that when you grow up, you must only join Central Bank of India, because Central Bank is largely filled with Parsis, or you have to join the Tata Group. So Tata in those days, Tata Group, those days and even today, demands tremendous respect amongst people. So that's what my grandmother had said. But obviously, it didn't happen then.
It didn't happen, and
But I'm still on the board of TCS.
you still are
So
on
in
the
that
board of
sense, there is
TCS.
that
So you do
some
have a Tata
association with
connection.
that.
You do
That's
have a Tata connection. But coming back to the point about what your advice would be to CFOs today, it's an uncertain environment. It's also an environment where there is a huge degree of aspiration and ambition, the need to want to grow quickly, scale quickly. What is it that you would caution? What kind of guardrails that would you put in place? If they say, claims are claims, but the balance sheet eventually doesn't lie, or hopefully shouldn't lie, what would you tell them?
I would say that if when you're a CFO, there are multiple ways in which you can get profits. Multiple ways. If you're a lending institution, for example, you take the example of the period from 2013 to 2018. 2014 to 2018. 2013 interest rates had gone up a lot.
Yeah.
You had the taper tantrum in the US, and then the interest rates came down, and 2014 onwards, rates remained by and large low. You would have seen a lot of the NBFCs in those days borrowing short-term money. So you'd borrow 3-month money, 6-month money through an instrument called commercial paper. And people who would borrow money, who would lend money against that commercial paper, would typically be the mutual funds, who have a very short-term vision in their, in their scheme of things. So many of these, not many, some of these NBFCs borrowed short and lent long-term. And the interest rate curve was nice and steep. So when you borrowed at the short end of the market, you borrowed at a low cost. When you lend money at the high end, at the longer tenure, your interest rate was high, you so made a very nice spread. And because interest rates remained low for a long period of time, every time you would renew your 3-month, 6-month commercial paper, you would get it at more or less the same rate. So people made a huge sum of money. But when the tide changed and when interest rates started moving up, all these companies which were borrowing short, lending long, ran into huge financial difficulty. So my advice to a CFO is always be very cautious. It's not your P&L that is important, it's your balance sheet that's more. You have to match your balance sheet. You don't take unnecessary risks on the balance sheet side. You can take risks on you should not take risks on maturity, you should not take risks on currency, and keep your balance sheet as safe, as secure as you can. Shireen, in HDFC, we had a cost income. I don't know if you may not be conversant with the terminology, but we had a concept of cost income ratio. Our cost income ratio in HDFC was under 8%. For a retail financial institution, that would be one of the probably the lowest, not in India, not in Asia, but one of the lowest in the world. So under 8% cost income ratio. To cater to a balance sheet size of over 7 lakh crores, nearly 8 lakh crores, our total number of employees we had in HDFC at the time of merger was only 4,136. So very limited number of employees catering to a large balance sheet. And we had brought in a lot of efficiency in the way the organization.
So this was by design. This was a very conscious strategic decision.
Yeah, of course. It was done by design. So we cut out bureaucracy. A lot of bureaucracy which you see in many companies, we empowered our people. We empowered our people to take decisions. And sometimes decisions would go wrong. It's not that every decision you take would go right, but you have to back up that person. When something goes right, you give him credit, give that person credit publicly.
Yeah.
But if something goes wrong, then you don't call him publicly and tell him, you did a bad thing. If you have to call him, you call him privately and speak to him on a one-on-one. So that creates that feeling of happiness. And that feeling of happiness, to my mind, is the single biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons, why we never had attrition in HDFC.
You know, you talked about happiness, Mr. Mistry. And again, when we talk about corporations, when we talk about culture, it's not a word that's used very often. In fact, it's very seldom used. What did it take to create a culture of happiness at HDFC?
I mean, it was just something which was imbibed. I think Deepak started that. It was always there in HDFC. I told you I joined HDFC
Because it was a happy place.
It looked like a happy place to me, and it remained a happy place all through. So we created that kind of an environment where we kept, the most important thing is keep politics out of the organization. Very difficult to do it when you have so many branches and so many locations, but I think by and large we succeed. So keep politics out of the organization.
But how do you keep politics out?
I mean, you keep a very free, open door policy where people are free to come in and talk to the seniors. They express their views, they express their thoughts. If there is a problem, they go and say, look, this problem is there, this thing is happening, such and such thing is happening, and you solve that problem. So, and you feel wanted. You have to create that feeling of being wanted. I don't think people leave organizations only because of salary and compensation. I don't believe that at all. Yes, compensation may be important, but I think the single biggest reason why people leave an organization is because they are not happy with the culture. They don't feel happy. They don't feel wanted. So we have to make people feel wanted. You know, Shirin, when I joined HDFC, I decided in the early days that if ever on a Friday evening I say, oh God, thank God it's a Friday, and you know I've got 2 days when I don't have to go to work. And on a Sunday morning I say, oh God, hell, I have to go to work tomorrow morning. If I ever see that kind of day, I'll leave the company. I never saw that day. You know, we never imposed or asked our employees to work late. We never asked our employees to work on holidays or Saturday. Never asked them. Maybe once in a way it could have happened, but by and large, no. But voluntarily, you would find that most employees, you would see that on a Saturday, the office would be 50 to 60% full. We had never asked anyone to, but they come because they like to. I mean, believe me, they actually like to be with the people around, like to work, like to do something. And yes, we rewarded employees through stock options. We had stock option plans, and we gave stock options to every employee in the company. I think Infosys was one company which did it multiple years ago, and we always did it whenever we gave stock options. Unlike others, we didn't have thousands of employees. We just 4,136 employees. So we could give stock options to every single employee.
All 4,136 of them.
All 4,136 of them. And because they had stock options, they had an ownership. They had a sense of, that what's good for the organization is good for them.
One of the other issues that I want to talk to you about and also understand from you the lessons and insights through your journey at HDFC. And many would argue that, and perhaps this is a criticism that you heard several times through the course of your career, that HDFC was too conservative, that you could have grown far more than what you did. But the balance between growth and excessive growth, or sometimes irresponsible growth, finding that sweet spot, what was the compass that guided you?
You asked me a question earlier on what you would advise a CFO. So let me tell you one thing. A CFO must have very, very clear, along with the CEO, must have very clear objectives for the company. We had extremely clear objectives. We had 4 main objectives. Our first objective was growth. It's not that we were against growth. We wanted growth. But we wanted growth at a pace that we would set for ourselves depending on the market conditions. If the market conditions were conducive, we could hope for a higher growth, or we would target a higher growth. If the market conditions were not conducive for whatever reason, we would plan a lower growth. Number 2 was asset quality. We said that the most important thing is asset quality. We will not compromise on asset quality or on margins just to get growth. And therefore, we don't care for market share. It became so difficult to convince some of our international investors who are used to the idea of market share, and everywhere they would say, Magan Yolata would come and say, you lost 10 basis points of market share. And I would say on TV, we don't care for market share. Market share is not important in the financial services business because you can get all the market share you want, but it will never give you long-term success. So market share, asset quality, cost control, and the 4th objective was keeping a matched balance sheet. These were our 4 objectives. So you should keep that objective in mind. Don't chase market share for the sake of chasing market share, because by chasing market share and having these short-term goals, you will do something which will go wrong. And the damage will not come now. The damage will come 2 years, 3 years, 5 years later.
Speaking of some of the other strategic decisions and choices that you made, the decision to diversify into allied areas, and you were instrumental in banking, life insurance, and so on and so forth. Again, the things that one needs to be mindful of, because we've, through this period of excessive money, low interest rates, etc., we've also seen the perils of diversification, too much diversification, too soon, too quickly. What are some of the lessons that you've learned along the road of the way that you diversified into some of these allied areas?
So look, Shireen, we were in a bit of a sweet spot, if I may say. We started housing finance. Housing finance did not exist in India. Then you had all the rules and regulations and all that came in. NHB came in later. In 1992, the Indian economy was opened up. You started seeing banks coming into private sector banks being set up. We applied for a banking license. We got a banking license. We thought there is an automatic synergy between housing finance and banking, because at the end of the day, it's the same activity.
Yeah.
You are lending money for one. You are lending money for housing. In the other entity, you are lending money for multiple other purposes. So I think diversification is good, but diversify only if you see a clear benefit in terms of the synergy that your existing business has in their new business which you want to get into. If you're, for example, running a cement company, don't start next start a steel company or something like that. That, to my mind, is not diversified.
Or if you're running a liquor company, don't start an airline. Many examples. You talked about synergies and the obvious synergy between HDFC and HDFC Bank. And of course, that much anticipated, much awaited merger is finally done. But, the wait goes all the way back to 2014 when it was almost done. Why do you think it took as long as it did?
Well, there are multiple factors which would make a merger feasible at one point of time and not feasible at another point. So over a period of time, regulations changed. For example, priority sector lending. Earlier, you had to necessarily go and lend that money. Laws changed after that, where you could buy, for example, buy priority sector lending certificates. Interest rates, very important. The interest rates are very important. You have to do the merger at a time when interest rates are low. So there are various ifs and buts which have to fit in the puzzle at that point of time, which fortunately did in 2022 when we announced the merger.
But in many ways, it must have been a bittersweet moment, especially for someone like you who's been part of the HDFC story for over 4 decades, even though you still, of course, are on the board of HDFC Bank. But that moment where finally it got done and HDFC no longer exists.
Shireen, we announced the merger, I think, on 1st April 2022. 1st April 2022. We involved the bankers. 2 bankers were involved from 15 days earlier. Lawyers were involved from a lot earlier. But we involved the other bankers only on that evening, the previous evening, which was a Sunday evening. So Sunday evening, 31st March 2022, if I recall right, was a Sunday. We called up all the bankers at that time and said, look, we are doing this. Merger will be announced tomorrow morning before market hours. Would you all be interested in being part of the deal? So that's why? Because confidentiality. And a merger of this magnitude, of this size, took place without a single murmur in the market. Over the years, there were multiple. But at that time in 2022, there was not one murmur about the merger. And yet, obviously, there was a lot of preparatory work which was done behind the scenes. A lot of preparatory work. It took 3 months at least, or at least 2 months of preparatory work in terms of few close people who were involved, who were sort of obviously sworn into secrecy. So I think it was one of the most quietly, most efficiently handled mergers that you would see in corporate life.
Let's talk about where HDFC Bank is today. You talked about the opportunity for growth for India, which also means that HDFC Bank has significant headroom for growth. When you look at the global pecking order, and we keep talking about size and whether size matters, what do you believe HDFC Bank is poised to do over the next decade or so?
Well, look, I think when you're in India, you're an entity, a financial institution in India, whether you're a bank, NBFC, whatever you are, your growth opportunity is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And the reason is the underpenetration that you will see for any and every financial service product. We have a young population. 2/3 of our population is below 35 years of age. And coming to housing for a moment, the average age of a first-time home buyer is about 37 to 38 years. So in effect, 2/3 of India's population has not even thought of buying a house. But over the next 1, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, all these younger people will come to the market to buy a house and then to take a car loan or then to take a credit card or whatever. So the growth opportunity that you will see for entities in India is phenomenal. And in that environment, as a bank with this volume and this size, obviously HDFC Bank will also keep growing and keep growing. See, housing is a need. It's a necessity. You need to stay in a house. And this rental housing in India is still not you may still hear the younger generation talking about renting a house and moving from one city to the other. But at the end of the day, for a middle income person, 35 years, 40 years person, he needs stability, he needs a house. Because a house gives him that comfort. There are so many people in Mumbai who would have bought a house in the 90s and 2000s, and then they would have retired, sold that house perhaps, got capital and used that capital to buy a smaller house or buy a house somewhere in wherever, Nasik, Nagpur, wherever, and shipped it to that place.
So your advice is to still own versus rent?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Because this debate is raging.
100%. Absolutely own a house. Because a house gives you that mental comfort that you have an asset, a real asset, which will always have a value. Always.
Always.
Always. Not a question of a doubt.
We've got a slew of companies looking at IPOing at this point in time. Many fintechs, from PhonePe to Razorpay and so on and so forth. What do you make of the Indian fintech story? What do you make of the march to the Lal Street for a lot of these companies? And what would your advice be to them as they look at IPOing?
My advice to any company, whether it's a fintech company or it's a brick and mortar company, or a manufacturing company or whatever, is that when you're doing an IPO, leave money on the table for the investor. I really genuinely mean it. When you're selling 20% of your equity, you still hold 80% of the equity. If you price your issue to perfection, the market may absorb it at that point of time, but your post-market performance will be pathetic. And then the value of the 80%, which you still hold, will get eroded. So my personal view, and that's what we did with HDFC Life when we did the issue. We did that with the bank. We did that with the asset management company. We really, truly valued it at a rate which was even lower than what the banks were suggesting in a way.
Is it the over-aggression of the bankers? That typically...
In some sense, yes. In some sense, yes. It's the over-ambition of over-aggression of some of the bankers, which could have contributed to some of these companies being over. But there's also the fact that the promoters sometimes want to take the highest price off, which to my mind is not the right thing, because in their own interest, it is not a good thing.
I want to talk about the Jugalbandi, the Deepak Parekh Keki Mistri Jugalbandi. The two of you have kind of built not just this institution, but built many of the institutions linked to HDFC together. What was it like working shoulder to shoulder?
No. So Shireen, there were multiple people. It's not just Deepak and me. I mean, obviously, Deepak and me were there, but we had.
It's a different kind of a Jugalbandi.
But we seriously had some very good people with HDFC. We had Renu, we had Rangan, multiple people. I don't want to miss out anyone. But we had great people. So everyone worked as a team. So it was really teamwork which brought HDFC to what it is. In the branches, we had some great people. So we had people whom we could trust, who worked together, who worked like a family. And people were in HDFC for 30 years, 35 years. All of them were over 25 years in the company. Why 25, 30, 35, 40 years? We never did lateral employment. We hired people fresh from college. And then they went through 18 months of management training with us. During that management training, we would identify what were their strengths, what were the good things that they had, and then we would put them on the job which would suit them best. So we molded the cultural fit was so very important. We didn't want to take people from like say an IIM or an IIT would want to become a general manager in 3 years or 4 years' time. I mean, our business was not rocket science. What we wanted from people was the highest standards of integrity. We could tolerate mistakes, and we would tolerate mistakes. And human beings, people make mistakes, but we would never, ever, ever, ever tolerate even the slightest degree of integrity-related issue. So I think that culture that we set was really what made HDFC successful. That culture brought about trust. Because if you make a happy employee will make a happy customer.
What was the difference in management styles between you and Mr. Parekh?
Not very different, to be honest. I mean, my style would be that you create the systems, you create the platform, you have the technology, you have the products, and then delegate and leave it to that individual to do what he's best suited to do. If there is something majorly going wrong, you intervene. Otherwise, let him do what he has to do, rather than try to control everything. And most importantly, keep politics. And that was a common thing with all of us. Keep politics out of the organization. Don't create. I mean, I have unfortunately seen some organizations from a distance where the CEO would want to create 2 or 3
power centers,
so that all the power centers. That's not the way the organization will ever do well.
Outside of work, you have a couple of things that you're passionate about. There's a reason why I started with Muhammad Ali, and I don't know how many people know this, but you actually did box a little bit in your youth.
In my college days, I lost my tooth here.
You did, and was that why you stopped?
That's why I stopped.
So how long did you do this for?
A couple of years.
A couple of years.
No,
what made you
very
want to?
Nothing. It was just something you did in college. First year of college, we had a boxing ring or something in Sydenham College where I studied, and so nothing more.
Was there somebody specific that inspired you?
No. I think Muhammad Ali. In those days, Muhammad Ali was a big name to reckon with. So when you're young, you have these this kind of passion about people. Like I used to always have passion about cricketers.
But cricket continues to be a passion for you.
Cricket continues to be a passion. Not playing anymore.
But you did play.
I did play. I used to play first as a spin bowler as a young boy, and then as you grow older, bowling leg spin, a fellow will come out of the crease and smash you. So I changed to fast bowling. So I used to play cricket, and that's the reason why my left knee got damaged very quickly. Because when you're a fast bowler, your last step is on your left foot, and you put a lot of pressure on the left foot and your right shoulder when you're bowling, if you're a right-arm bowler. So that resulted in my foot getting damaged.
And that resulted in the cricketing aspirations ending there?
No, not cricketing. That happened many years later. Then once I started working, then obviously there was no time to play. I played cricket in my college days, in my school days. A little in school, more in college, but really not thereafter, not much thereafter.
What has, whether it's boxing or cricket, the mentality of a sports person, I don't want to say sportsman, mentality of a sports person, what do you think that you took from those experiences and brought to the boardroom with you?
I think learn to lose also. It's not that every time in life you will win. There will be times when you'll win, there'll be times when you lose, mistakes will happen, failures will happen in life, but you have to have the perseverance to keep continuing. To my mind, that would be the one.
Is there a favorite cricketer or a favorite inning?
Today not so much, but yes, in my younger days, many favorite cricketers. Farooq Engineer, because probably he was a Parsi, so Farooq Engineer. Ajit Wadekar was a big fan of Ajit Wadekar as I was growing up in my early college days. Sachin Tendulkar, massive fan of Sachin Tendulkar for multiple years.
And it's not just cricket, not just boxing, but you have a love affair, running love affair with Hindi movies.
Not movies. No,
Songs.
no. Old Hindi songs.
Old Hindi songs, not the movies though.
No. I don't watch movies.
At all?
Now I don't watch movies at all. Actually at all. Maybe one movie or two movies in a year because my wife would force me to go for a movie, and half the time I'd walk out to the theater and go out. But movies not so much, but old Hindi film songs, yes. That made me improve.
How did that happen? The initiation into the world of old Hindi film music?
No, I don't know. From childhood, we used to hear the Radio Ceylon. There used to be something called Radio Ceylon, and it used to come on one particular day. I think it was a Friday or something. So every day, my father, my mother would love it. They'd put it on, and then you just develop that thing.
What's the favorite old Hindi film song that you hum?
Many. I mean, there are many. I would say Kamoshi. There was that song. What is it?
Pukarlo.
Tum Pukarlo, Tumhara Intezar hai. That's a lovely song. There were many such very good songs over time.
Do you sing at all?
No, I don't. I can't pronounce. My Hindi is pathetic.
Well, you did a good job just now.
I hardly speak Hindi.
But, the family office and your daughter's helping you invest through that family office. Beyond financial services, which is, of course, the sector that you believe is poised for an inflection point, what else are you looking at in terms of bets that you would like to bring?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at investing, you have to first diversify your total resources. Supposing you have, I'm throwing a figure, 100. You have to decide of that 100 how much will go into equity, how much you should invest in fixed income, how much you should invest in alternates, and how much you should invest in real estate. So have that broad classification, breaking down your total wealth into these 4 categories. And then depending on that, then you can decide on where to invest and how to invest. Unless you do that, unless you do this basic differentiation, you will go all over the place.
What's the biggest mistake people make when investing?
Go by the spur of the moment. So someone comes and says, this company is great, go and invest. No, don't invest like that. When you're investing in a share, honestly, my investments are very long term. If I buy a share, it is with the idea that I will never sell that share. I never sell shares, honestly. If I buy a share, it is for the next 20 years.
What has been your mantra of navigating through uncertainty, volatility, of dealing with things that you have no control over? What's been the mantra to survive uncertainty?
I think the mantra is that you have to do what you can. You can't predict. COVID came out of the blue. But you have to have enough resilience in your system to be able to take care of these kind of setbacks. You can't predict. Nobody could have predicted COVID. And nobody could predict, this warfare or trade war or whatever that we talk about. So you do what you can. Strengthen your balance sheet in a manner in which can absorb any kind of a little shock that comes once in a way. Build the resilience in the company. Get the right people to work for you. Create the right culture. Yes, there will be some setback along the way when you have this sort of uncertain period happening, but you'll come out of it very quickly. I mean, at that time, for example, lowering the stamp duty on real estate transactions was a huge boost because it created a lot of demand for properties, which then meant that construction picked up. If construction picked up, more employment got generated.
Do you think the Indian real estate sector is poised for an inflection point? I mean, it's been a sector that's been perennially plagued with challenges. The last few years have seen a significant recovery. What's the take on India's real estate sector?
So I'll tell you, the period between 2016 and 2020 was a difficult period for the real estate sector in cities like Mumbai and Delhi. And that was a period when there were massive regulatory changes which were for the good of the system.
Yeah, with RERA coming in.
which are now you're seeing the effects or the benefit of that flowing through. But the initial change when RERA came in, for example, the Real Estate Regulatory Act, GST came in on under construction properties, demonetization. In my opinion, demonetization was a great thing. But all these factors temporarily had an impact on the real estate sector. So 2016 to 2020, demand for real estate slowed down. Because demand slowed down and developers historically were used to borrowing a certain amount of money from a bank or an institution, and then the rest of the funding they required for the project would come out of sale of under construction properties. And because under construction properties stopped selling, and the developer couldn't get the money and therefore couldn't complete the project. So that was what caused the stress that you saw in the real estate sector in that period of three and a half, 4 years. But 2020 onwards, things changed. Yes, some projects which suffered in that 16 to 20 period, had a very difficult time. But post 2020, you're seeing that all the new projects that are coming up with far more financial discipline, far more openness, far more transparency in terms of floor area, carpet area, and a variety of other things.
What is the best piece of advice that you have received through the course of your career? What is the piece of advice that you would like to leave people with?
It's the same, which I would say would be that it's integrity, that the world will respect you for what you are. Remain humble all your life. You have to remain humble. You have to be approachable to everyone. And really, that's the way people will not only like you, but people will like the organization that you stand for. But the single biggest bit of advice would be integrity. Never do anything which would make you feel even slightly nervous or slightly unhappy if it was reported in the newspapers the next morning. That was a mantra that we had followed in HDFC. And the other mantra that we followed was that there is no pillow or there is no cushion as soft as a clear conscience.
Yes, and
so I think these were the
so you continue to sleep very well at night.
You continue to sleep well at night. Seriously.
Is there a favorite number that you have since you're a numbers man?
9.
9. Any particular reason
No
why?
reason.
Just that. Are you superstitious?
It used to be 7, which was my birth date, but then I found that 9 somehow is a day which is always turns out. For some reason, 9 turns out.
So you're superstitious.
Or anything which is a multiple of 9.
A multiple of 9.
I'm not very superstitious, not very, but yes, my car would always end up with a 9 number.
Well, Mr. Mistry, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Leadership Language. We appreciate your time and we wish you the very best of luck in your journey from here on. But thank you so much for sharing your insights and your stories with us.
Thank you, Shireen. Been lovely talking to you. Thank you.
Well, you heard it from the man himself. The softest cushion is a clear conscience. If you enjoyed watching the Leadership Language, for more advice like that, do tune into CNBC TV 18. We bring you leaders giving us a very deeply personal account of what has shaped their stories, their journeys. From all of us here on the team for now, thanks very much for watching.
(2025년 7월 2일입니다) 미국 증시 특징주 시작을 해보도록 하겠습니다. 일단은 오른쪽에 다우 먼저 확인을 해보시게 되면, 일단은 미니 선물과 미니 나스닥 S&P는 약세고 이어지고 있습니다. 역사적 고점이었던 45,000포인트 때까지는 다우지수가 상승 여력이 있다라고 생각을 하고 있는데, 나스닥의 경우 오늘 지지가 나와야 되거든요. 현재 전 고점 부근이고요. 지지가 나와야지 추가적인 상승이 이어질 가능성이 있는데, 지금 상황 보게 되면 약세의 흐름을 이어갈 가능성이 높다, 이렇게 보시면 될 것 같습니다. 다음으로 S&P 500의 경우는 조금 더 조정을 받아도 상관이 없습니다. 6,150포인트까지 조정받아도 크게 무리는 없다라고 생각을 하고 있는데, 오늘 어떤 흐름을 보일지를 체크를 해봐야 되겠죠. 일단 골드만삭스에서 이번 랠리는 향후 몇 주간 더 이어질 가능성이 높다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. S&P 500 지수가 1928년 이후에 7월 평균 1.3% 상승을 했고요. 7월 초에서 중순까지죠. 1월 1일부터 15일까지 평균 2.4%의 수익률을 기록을 했다라는 걸 보게 되면 아마 7월에 상승 가능성이 있다라는 걸 반영하고 있다라고 보시면 될 것 같고요. 트럼프 행정부에서 반도체 제조 설비에 대한 세제 혜택이 확대가 됐다라고 얘기를 하게 되면서 미국 내 반도체 투자가 증가할 것이다라고 얘기를 했는데, 아름다운 법이라고 얘기를 하죠. 상원에서 통과가 되고 하원 심사를 앞두고 있는 반도체 제조 설비 관련 세제 혜택이 확대가 되었는데, 미국 내 제조 설비를 건설하는 반도체 기업들에 대해서 세제 혜택이 기존 25%에서 35%로 늘어납니다. 초안에 언급을 했던 30%보다 혜택이 더 커진 것으로 볼 수가 있을 것 같고요. 만약에 이 안이 통과가 될 경우 직접적인 수혜를 기대할 수 있는 종목으로서는 인텔, TSMC, 마이크론 테크놀로지가 있다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 단 2026년까지 미국 설비에서 생산량을 확대해야 된다라는 이슈도 있었다라는 거 참고해 주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 그리고 지금 M7 관련해서 한 3종목 정도가 뉴스가 좀 나온 상태인데, 확인을 좀 해보게 되면 애플에 관한 얘기가 좀 나왔습니다. 제프리스에서 전 세계 스마트폰이 판매량이 둔화가 될 것이다라고 얘기를 하고 있어요. 그럼에도 불구하고 애플은 다를 것이다라고 얘기를 했는데, 일단은 아이폰 판매량 자료 등을 분석을 해보면서 단기 실적이 강력하게 나타나면서 투자 심리를 뒷받침할 수 있을 것이다라고 얘기를 했고, 투자 의견을 언더퍼폼에서 보유로 목표 주가를 170.62달러에서 188.32달러로 상향 조정을 했습니다. 앞서 애플 아이폰의 4월, 5월 글로벌 판매량이 전년 동기 대비 15% 증가한 것으로 나타났는데, 이는 2021년 3분기 이후에 가장 큰 폭이라고 보시면 될 것 같고요. 6월에도 판매량이 우수했을 것이다라고 보이고 있습니다. 이 관세 시행을 앞두고 수요가 앞당겨져서 발생을 했다라는 점이 아마 이런 판매량이 늘어난 결과라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같고요. 중국 할인 행사를 통해서 점유율이 회복된 점 역시 이와 같은 판매 증가세의 배경으로 보인다라고 얘기를 하고 있어요. 그 다음에 쭉 넘어가 보시게 되면 오늘 테슬라에 대한 얘기가 좀 나오고는 있는데, 테슬라 요즘에 자꾸 싸워갖고 스트리트 파이터가 아닌가 이런 생각을 좀 해볼 수가 있을 것 같은데, 중국 승용차협회에서 테슬라 중국 생산 판매량이 71,599대로서 전년 동기 대비 0.8% 증가했다라고 밝혔습니다. 8개월 연속 판매량이 감소를 했는데 여기에서 회복했다라고 보시면 될 것 같고요. 5월 대비 16.1% 증가한 것이기도 합니다. 그런데 증가를 하기는 했습니다만 중국 전기차들이 워낙 많은 판매량을 보였기 때문에 뭐 테슬라 판매량이 높아졌다라고 하더라도 큰 의미는 없다라고 생각을 하고 있습니다. 다만 장 초반에 0.28% 상승을 하고 있는 모습을 보여주고 있고요. 아마존에 대한 내용도 나왔습니다. 일단은 번스타인에서 아마존의 인공지능 사업이 성장세가 이어질 것이다 라고 얘기를 하게 되면서 목표 주가를 기존 230달러에서 235달러로 상향 조정을 했습니다. 이 아마존 웹 서비스의 1분기 기준 전년 대비 성장률이 17%로 둔화되기는 했는데 AI 관련 수익은 여전히 세 자릿수 성장세를 보이고 있다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 다만 서버 용량 부족과 함께 칩 부품 공급 계약 등으로 단기적으로는 아마존의 매출 상한이 제한될 것이다 라고 얘기를 했고요. 그 다음에 최근에 아마존닷컴 창업자인 제프 베조스가 주식을 330만 주를 매각을 했습니다. 뭐 이거는 이제 3월에 채택한 뭐 이전 거래 계획의 일부라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같고요. 해당 계획에 따라서 베조스는 2026년 5월 29일까지 최대 2,500만 주 매각을 할 수 있다라는 얘기가 있습니다. 이 역시 상단을 제한하는 요인이 될 수 있다라고 생각을 하셔야겠죠. 자, 그 외에 기타 종목들 체크를 좀 해보도록 하겠습니다. 물론 기타 종목이라고 하더라도 지금 제가 뭐 대표주 정도만 뽑아놨는데 이 종목 안에서 움직임도 있을 수 있다라는 걸 좀 참고를 해주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 중요한 건 우리는이 아니라 제 개인적으로는 특징주 안에서 주가가 아직 덜 올라간 그런 종목들을 선정을 하고 있으니까 이 종목들을 찾는데 우선적으로 생각을 하시면 될 것 같습니다. 기본적으로 실적이 좋다라고 하더라도 주가가 이미 많이 올라가 있으면 그 종목은 관심 종목에서 제외를 해야 된다라는 걸 말씀을 좀 해드리도록 하겠습니다. 크로거의 경우는 7월 달에 발표되는 3분기 실적이 좋지는 않습니다. 연간 실적이 좋죠. 주가는 이미 뭐 역사적 신고가를 기록을 하고 있는 모습을 보여주고 있기 때문에 넘어가는 방향으로 진행을 해보도록 하겠습니다. 어차피 이 내용은 다 정리를 해서 제가 블로그에 올려드릴 테니까 참고해 주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 미국 맥주 브랜드 모델로의 제조사 콘스텔레이션 브랜드가 전일 실적을 발표를 했는데 실적이 그렇게 좋지는 못했어요. 그 이유가 뭐냐면 캔맥주 수입품에 대해서 관세를 부과하기로 했다라고 얘기를 하고 있는데 알루미늄 관세가 3월 중심 25%였다가 6월 초에 50% 인상이 됐습니다. 이 맥주 포장재인 캔용 알루미늄과 멕시코산 수입 맥주가 콘스텔레이션 브랜드의 핵심 요소였는데 이게 이제 문제가 터지기 시작을 했다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같고요. 오라클도 역시 주가는 지속 상승하고 있는 모습을 보여주고 있습니다. 뭐 얼마 전에 급등이 나왔다가 시장이 뭐 조정을 좀 받아주면서 같이 조정을 보여주었는데 그럼에도 불구하고 제프리스의 애널리스트는 오라클 클라우드 사업이 성장 가능성이 기회가 된다라고 얘기를 하게 되면서 투자 의견을 매수, 목표 주가를 220달러로 유지를 했는데 최근 다수의 클라우드 서비스 계약을 체결했다라고 오라클 경영진이 밝혔고요. 이번에 체결된 계약 중 하나는 2028년 5월 결산에 연매출 300억 달러 이상 창출할 수 있는 대형 계약이다라고 강조를 했습니다. 그 외에 시티그룹도 오라클에 대한 투자 의견을 제시를 했는데 중립으로 유지를 했어요. 앞서 언급을 해드렸던 이 클라우드 서비스 계약이 오픈 AI와 연관되어 있을 가능성이 있다라고 얘기를 했고요. 그런데 이 내용이 이미 시장에는 반영이 되어 있을 수 있다라는 것 때문에 투자 의견을 중립으로 유지를 했다라고 보시면 될 것 같습니다. 로빈훗은 지금 프랑스 쪽으로 프랑스에서 발표를 한 게 있습니다. 가상화폐 이벤트를 개최를 했는데 뭐 이에 따라서 모건 스탠리, 키뱅크, 바클레이즈, 뱅크 오브 아메리카, 모건 스탠리, 미즈호 모두 투자 의견을 제시를 했다라는 거 참고해 주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 그래서 모건 스탠리는 로빈훗 마켓츠에 대해서 투자 의견을 시장 비중과 목표 주가를 43달러로 유지를 했고요. 키뱅크는 투자 의견을 비중 확대로 유지를 했고 목표 주가를 60달러에서 110달러로 상향 조정을 했습니다. 굉장히 높게 평가를 했다라고 보시면 될 것 같고요. 바클레이즈는 투자 의견을 비중 확대 목표 주가를 7달러로 유지를 했고요. 뱅크 오브 아메리카는 투자 의견 매수 목표 주가를 65달러에서 95달러로 상향 조정을 했습니다. 모건 스탠리 역시 모건 스탠리는 말씀을 해드렸죠. 요거는 좀 제외를 해도 될 것 같고요. 미주에서는 투자 의견을 아웃퍼폼 유지하고 목표 주가를 80달러에서 99달러로 상향 조정을 했는데 모건 스탠리만 그렇게 뭐 좋다라고 얘기를 안 하는 것 같습니다. 자, 그 다음에 대형은행주가 스트레스 테스트가 마무리가 됐죠. 그러면서 자사주에 대한 얘기를 발표를 했고 배당도 역시 얘기를 했는데 JP모건 체인스가 분기 배당금을 주당 1.5달러로 인상을 했고요. 500억 달러 규모의 신규 자사주 매입 계획을 승인을 했습니다. 뱅크 오브 아메리카는 배당금을 0.28달러로 인상을 했고요. 웰스파고 역시 배당금을 0.45달러로 인상을 했습니다. 모건 스탠리 역시 배당금을 1달러로 늘리고요. 만기일이 없는 최대 200억 달러 규모의 자사주 매입 계획을 승인을 했고 골드만삭스 배당금을 4달러로 인상, 시티그룹 배당금 0.6달러로 인상을 했습니다. 그런데 주가는 시장이 약세다 보니까 뭐 큰 폭으로 성장하기는 어려운 게 현재의 상황이다라고 볼 수가 있을 것 같고요. 나이키 실적을 발표를 했죠. 장기적인 얘기를 많이 했다라고 보시면 될 것 같은데 어제 그 소매유통 쪽으로 보시게 되면 나이키, TJX 컴퍼니, 룰루레몬 이런 종목들 신발 의류가 최근에 좀 상승을 했는데 뭐 그거에 따라 아거스도 역시 나이키에 대한 투자 의견을 보유해서 매수로 상향 조정을 했고요. 목표 주가를 85달러로 유지를 했습니다. 뭐 단기적으로 좋지는 않다라고 얘기를 하는데 중장기로는 좋다라고 얘기를 하고 있죠. 이 내용은 엄청 많이 나오는 것 같아요. 엄청 많이 나온다라고 보시면 될 것 같고요. 디웨이브 컴텀은 양자암호 쪽에서 뭐 포함이 안 돼 있죠. 포함이 안 돼 있는데 있네요. 디웨이브 컴텀 4억 달러 규모의 장내 주식 공모를 완료를 했습니다. 뭐 이전에도 지금 2억 달러 규모의 보통주 3호 발행을 완료를 해서 총 현금 포지션이 3억 5천만 달러 이상으로 늘어났는데 실적이 그렇게 좋지는 않죠. 그러다 보니까 뭐 이 부분이 지속적으로 악영향을 끼쳤다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같은데 오늘 얘기가 나온 건 이쪽 얘기가 좀 많이 나왔습니다. 그 다음에 리게티 컴퓨팅에 대한 얘기도 나왔는데 보시게 되면 켄터 피츠제럴드에서 리게티 컴퓨팅에 대해서 장기적으로 관심을 가질 필요가 있다라고 얘기를 하게 되면서 투자 의견을 비중 확대 목표 주가를 15달러로 커버리지를 개시를 했습니다. 뭐 다들 아시다시피 양자암호의 기술은 아직 초기 단계죠. 그러면서 잠재적으로 막대한 경제적 영향을 미칠 수 있다라고 얘기를 하고 있는데 이게 본격화 되려면 당연히 수년이 더 필요하다라고 얘기를 하고 있는 거고 리게티 컴퓨팅은 초전도 기술 퓨어 플레이어 기업이다라고 얘기를 하게 되면서 최근에 가장 큰 투자가 이루어졌다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 실적은 여전히 적자가 지속이 되고는 있습니다만 뭐 중장기적으로 관점 보게 되면 긍정적이다라고 얘기가 나오고 있다라는 거 참고해 주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 그 외에 트레이드 데스크가 어디 포함이 되어 있을 텐데 눈에 띄진 않네요. 시티그룹에서 트레이드 데스크에 대해서 투자 의견을 매수로 유지를 했고요. 목표 주가를 기존 82달러에서 90달러로 상향 조정을 했습니다. 이거는 실적까지 체크를 좀 보면서 볼게요. 제가 알기로 트레이드 데스크 같은 경우 주가가 그쵸? 그렇게 많이 올라가지는 않았고요. 많이 올라가지 않았다라는 건 아직은 먹을 여력이 남아있다. 이렇게 보셔야 될 것 같습니다. 실적도 제가 알기로는 좋죠. 좋고 2분기 실적도 계속 좋아집니다. 그러면 최근에 확인을 해봤을 때 이전에 저항으로 형성되었던 가격이 77달러 부근이다라고 볼 수가 있을 것 같은데 이 77달러를 올라가든가 아니면 조정을 받게 되면서 다시 한번 67달러 부근까지 떨어지게 되면 매수 타이밍이 나온다라는 거 참고를 해주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 체크를 해야겠죠. 2분기 실적 좋아지고 3분기 실적 좋아지고요. 이거는 색깔을 조금 바꿔놔야죠. 빨간색으로 바꿔보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 그 다음에 홈디포 SRS 디스트리뷰션을 통해서 GMS 인수를 발표를 했죠. 이거에 대해서 다 긍정적이다라고 보고는 있습니다. 그래서 트위스트에서는 투자 의견 중립으로 유지를 했고요. 목표 주가 150달러에서 110달러로 상향 조정을 했습니다. 바클레이즈 역시 투자 의견을 시장 비중 유지, 목표 주가를 95달러에서 110달러로 상향 조정을 했고요. 루캐피탈 역시 투자 의견 중립 유지, 목표 주가를 95달러에서 110달러로 상향. 베어드 역시 투자 의견 아웃퍼폼 유지, 목표 주가를 95달러에서 110달러로 상향 조정을 했다라는 걸 확인을 해볼 수가 있을 것 같고요. 요거는 홈디포 주가가 굉장히 높아요. 그래서 요거는 그냥 넘어간다라는 거 참고해 주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 자, 그 다음에 태양광 업체에 대한 얘기가 나왔는데 어제 상승을 했습니다. 그런데 오늘은 그냥 강보합 수준으로 움직이고 있는 모습을 보여주고 있어요. 어레이 테크놀로지, 넥스트트래커, 솔스 테크놀로지, 그 다음에 썬런, 인페이즈 에너지, 솔라이즈 테크놀로지가 있는데 원래 시장에서는 미국의 그 제조가 다 맞춰진 퍼스트 솔라가 최대 수혜가 될 것이다라고 얘기를 했는데 뭐 생각보다는 주가가 못 올라갔죠. 그런데 지금 같은 경우 감세안이 통과가 되게 되면서 지금 퍼스트 솔라에 대한 모멘텀이 좀 줄어들 가능성이 있다라는 얘기가 나오고 있습니다. 다른 종목들의 실적이 긍정적이다라고 얘기를 하고 있고요. 그렇다라고 한다면 굳이 퍼스트 솔라를 고집할 이유는 없다라는 거. 다만 퍼스트 솔라의 실적도 올해 긍정적이다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같고요. 확인을 좀 해볼까요? 퍼스트 솔라. 제가 알기로 2분기 실적이 굉장히 좀 긍정적이었던 걸로 알고 있습니다. 확인해 보시게 되면 그래도 1분기의 실적이 안 좋았다가 2, 3분기 좋아지는 모습 보여주고 있고 연간으로도 긍정적인 흐름이 연출이 될 가능성이 높다라고 보시면 될 것 같아요. 이 트레이드 데스크도 2025년 실적 괜찮죠. 그리고 태양광 섹터에서 여기에는 포함이 안 됐는데 퍼스트 솔라 언급을 해드리도록 하겠습니다. 그 다음에 어도비 주가가 많이 늘렸죠. 저는 어도비에서 만들어진 AI 되게 괜찮았다라고 생각을 하고 있거든요. 그런데 주가는 그렇지 못한 모습을 보여주고 있습니다. 보시게 되면 이게 600달러 부근까지 올라왔다가 조정을 계속 받아주고 있는 모습인데 실적은 계속 잘 나와요. 사상 최대의 실적이 계속 이어진다라는 걸 확인을 해볼 수가 있을 것 같고요. 2분기도 실적 좋아지고 3분기도 실적이 좋아집니다. 아마 이 부분은 실적이 발표가 되게 되면 그때부터 주가에 영향을 끼칠 가능성이 있다라고 생각을 하고 있고요. 최대 실적이 나오겠죠. 로스차일드에서 인공지능 기술이 어도비에게 경쟁 위협이 되고 있다라고 분석을 하게 되면서 밸류에이션 축소를 예상을 했고요. 투자 의견을 중립해서 매도로 목표 주가를 420달러에서 280달러로 하향 조정을 했습니다. 이 어도비가 장기간 구축한 경쟁 해지가 젠 AI의 등장으로 인해 약화되고 있다. 특히 저가형 서비스 시장이 인공지능 기술을 도입으로 잠식당하고 있다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 이 때문에 하방 압력이 커지고 있다라고 얘기를 하고 있는데 뭐 실적적인 측면으로 보게 되면 나쁘지는 않다라는 걸 확인을 해볼 수가 있을 것 같습니다. 주가는 지금 320달러 일단은 조정을 좀 받을 가능성이 있다라고 보시면 될 것 같고요. 220달러 얘기하는데 저는 260달러 최대한 뭐 조정을 받는다라고 하더라도 한 260달러에서는 반등 나올 가능성이 있다라고 보고 있습니다. 그다음에 센틴 실적이 발표가 되었는데 뭐 향후 실적 전망을 철회를 했대요. 그래서 마켓플레이스 사업에서 예상보다 낮은 시장 성장성을 주요 이유로 꼽았고요. 뭐 이 때문에 주가는 당연히 떨어질 수밖에 없다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같습니다. 뭐 전체적으로 올라가는 것도 있는데 크게 보게 되면 실적이 약세가 이어진다라는 거겠죠. 그렇기 때문에 뭐 미리 발을 뺀 게 아닌가라고 볼 수가 있을 것 같고요. 그 다음에 베린트 시스템즈에 대한 얘기가 나왔는데 주가 많이 하락을 해 있는 상태고요. 실적만 좋아지게 되면 이 종목은 관심 종목으로 들어갈 수 있겠죠. 그래서 확인해 보게 되면 실적은 좋아지는데 3분기, 4분기부터 좋아지네요. 4분기. 이 종목 괜찮은데요. 제 입장에서는. 25 최대 실적, 그 다음에 4Q, 흑전. 저는 차트 괜찮아 보입니다. 참고로 이게 완벽하게 뭐 협상이 될지 이 부분이 관건이다라고 얘기를 하고 있는 거고요. 그 다음에 룰루레몬에 대한 얘기가 있는데 코스트코를 상대로 지적재산권 침해 소송을 제기를 했습니다. 관세 악재가 여전히 존재하는 룰루레몬인데 뭐 최근에 들어서 반등이 좀 나오는 모습이었고 괜찮은데? 지금 지지선까지 다 왔잖아요. 그렇죠? 그리고 저항 부근까지 있잖아요. 이 저항 돌파를 하게 되면 저는 주가 상승 여력이 있다라고 보고 있습니다. 룰루레몬 실적 확인을 다시 한번 해보게 되면 내년이 실적이 안 좋네요. 실적이 좋지는 않네요. 2027년은 좋은데 그러면 이거는 그냥 단기 트레이딩으로밖에 매매를 못해요. 차트는 좋은데 그러면 기술적인 매매만 진행을 할 수 있다라는 거 참고를 해주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 그린브라이어 실적 발표를 했습니다. 어닝 서프라이즈 기록을 했고요. 이 때문에 13% 상승 출발을 할 것으로 예상을 하고 있습니다. 근데 오늘 시장에 올라간다라고 하더라도 눌릴 가능성이 높겠죠. 당연히. 그래서 제가 생각하는 건 만약에 조금 더 올라간다라고 하더라도 55.5달러 부근에서는 뭐 일부 차익 실현하는 것도 저는 바람직하다라고 생각을 하고 있습니다. 그 다음에 카바는 키뱅크에서 투자 의견을 비중 확대로 유지를 했고 목표 주가를 100달러로 커버리지를 했는데 아마 주가 많이 떨어져 있네요. 그리고 이렇게 음식료주 혹은 뭐라고 해야 할까요? 이런 회사들은 의류도 동일한데 매장의 단가가 얼마인지 그게 중요해요. 매장 회전율 이렇게 얘기를 해야 될 것 같은데 그게 굉장히 좀 중요합니다. 주가 떨어질만 했죠. 실적이 뭐 떨어지니까 당연히 약세가 이어지는 모습이었고, 리게티 컴퓨팅까지 다 말씀을 좀 해드렸습니다. 이거는 제가 블로그로 올려드리도록 할 테니까 참고해 주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 그 다음에 새롭게 나온 뉴스가 있는지 확인을 해보게 되면 노스롭 그루만에 대한 얘기가 하나가 더 나왔습니다. 이 미 해군의 차세대 전투기 개발 사업이 보류될 수도 있을 것이다라고 얘기를 하고 있네요. 그래서 미국의 매체 악시오스가 도널드 트럼프 행정부가 미 해군의 6세대 전투기 개발 사업인 FXXX 이 프로그램을 보류할 가능성이 있다라고 전했습니다. 노스롭 그루만은 이게 또 하나의 모멘텀이 될 것이다라고 생각을 했는데 그렇지 않은 모습을 보여주고 있고요. 올해 초 로키드 마틴을 제치고 보잉이 미국 공군의 6세대 전투기 사업을 수주를 하게 되면서 시장의 이목을 끌었는데 좀 아쉬운 감이 없지 않아 있겠죠. 그래서 공군 계약에서 보잉이 승리한 만큼 해군에서는 공급사 다변화를 위한 노스롭이 수주할 가능성이 높다라고 기대를 해왔는데 뭐 이번에 해군은 별도 기체 개발 대신 공군용 F-47을 도입하는 방안을 검토 중이다라고 전해졌습니다. 이러면 노스롭 그루만 주가 떨어질 가능성이 있다라는 거죠. 확인을 해봐야 될 것 같네요. 그렇죠. 떨어지죠. 아무래도 악재가 나왔으니까. ADP 민간 고용이 발표가 되었는데요. 33,000명 감소했다라고 밝혔습니다. 이는 컨센서스 10만 명 증가를 크게 하회한 거고요. 2023년 3월 이후 처음으로 감소했다라고 보시면 될 것 같습니다. 또한 5월의 민간 고용도 최초 37,000명을 발표된 것으로 29,000명으로 하회가 됐다라는 것 참고를 해주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 아까 전에 나온 얘기가 파월 얘기가 좀 있었거든요. 만약에 트럼프가 관세에 대한 얘기를 하지 않았으면 금리 인하를 하려고 했다. 근데 이게 변수였다라고 얘기를 하고 있죠. 뭐 지금 뭐 트럼프가 스트리트 파이터인지 아니면 뭐 다른 인사들이 스트리트 파이터인지 엄청 싸우고 다니네요. 아시다시피 뭐 중동에서도 싸움을 엄청 많이 하고 있고요. 와, 갑자기 테슬라가 거의 5% 상승을 하고 있는데 뻥카 같은데? 일단은 장 전인데 미니 선물과 S&P 약세가 지속되고 있고요. M7 중에서는 애플주만 상승을 하고 있습니다. 기술주 안에서 소프트웨어와 하드웨어 모두 약세가 좀 이어지고 있는 거고요. 상승하는 업종을 찾는 게 좀 빠를 것 같은데 금 관련주와 함께 전통에너지 관련주를 제외하고는 그렇게 뭐 상승하는 모습 보여주고 있지는 않네요. 음식료, 담배도 일부 상승을 하고 있다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같습니다. 이제 개장 1분 남았는데요. 준비하시면 될 것 같고요. 제가 말씀을 해드렸던 이 내용은 블로그로 올려놓고 블로그 주소 공유해 드리도록 하겠습니다.
Welcome to a State Bank of India special as the Grand Old Bank celebrates its 70th birthday today. SBI is, of course, mini Indian economy, accounting for 20% of the country's bank credit, 22% of the country's bank deposits. 55 years ago, SBI was born when the Imperial Bank was converted into State Bank of India under the SBI Act. Since then, its deposits have grown, hold your breath, 25,500 times. Its profits in the latest year at 77,561 crores was 52,000 times what it was in 1955. When the nation is in trouble, it looks to SBI. At the height of the balance of payments crisis in 1991, SBI raised $1.6 billion through the India Development Bonds, and it repeated this feat again after a decade during the Pokhran nuclear test in 1998 when India faced sanctions. SBI personnel go on to head many other banks, Yes Bank included, and also staff the RBI and the SBI. There is a deputy governor over there. Most important, SBI has changed with the times. In its 50th year, the bank gave its younger competitor HDFC solid competition in home loans and actually won that competition. Today, with its YONO, it is competing with even fintechs. And on that celebratory note, may I welcome the birthday boy of the day, SBI Chairman, the Challa Srinivasulu Sethi. Mr. Sethi, thank you very much for dropping into our studio on what must be a big day back home at SBI.
Thank you, Lata. It's a great moment for all of us. And I wanted to be in your studio to celebrate this occasion.
We are honored. We are honored.
And, I think the journey of SBI is also synonymous with the journey of India. I think to that extent, it's a great moment to celebrate.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you.
Actually, when SBI comes, one looks at the future. And so will our viewers. So just give us an idea. What are the immediate targets you have set the bank?
I don't call them targets, but we believe that if you have seen the journey of SBI, it always reimagined its role and stayed relevant. So we believe in SBI that going forward, while we have seen a lot of disruptions in the last 70 years, the disruptions will be much more frequent and much more deeper. So how do you handle these disruptions, particularly in terms of your business model, in terms of the service delivery, in terms of customer protection? I think we all want to focus making SBI ready for another maybe 200 years. This is what, so the center to this plan is our digital transformation journey. While we have, as you mentioned, the scale and we have the trust of the people, but the scale and trust alone will not make you the best and most preferred bank. So we would like to assure our customers and stakeholders that our investment in technology, digitalization continue so that the customer engagement with us will be much more simple.
Well, actually, would you say that in the journey, in the 75 years, the government and the regulators' attitude to SBI and state-owned banks has changed? I mean, first, PSU banks after nationalization were part of the fisc. There was financial repression. But in 1991, you all were listed. SBI was listed first. And after that, more recently, I mean, the CRR cut, there is no big danger in front of the country. Till the CRR cut is given so that I think banks have a fair chance against mutual funds. Would you say the attitude is changing to give you all a fair chance?
See, the public sector banks are having a dominant market share.
Yeah.
Some of them would have lost the market share, but I think they're all trying to...
Collectively, 60%.
Collectively, we are the dominant players in the industry. Which means that any initiative, either by the government of India or by the regulator, cannot be meaningfully taken to the economy and the general public unless there is a wider participation of the public sector banks. I don't think there is any shift in the attitude. But one thing I can definitely tell you that maybe last 2-3 decades, or definitely in the current decade, is that we are getting a absolutely commercial banking approach in the public sector banks. and what I call ownership neutral approach towards serving the customers, and that is getting reflected. Obviously, the CRR cut is not meant for only.
You're getting a level playing field.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that has been the tone of the Reserve Bank, but I think banking sector, that is public sector and private sector, have got a better deal this year with liquidity being thrown in and the CRR cut. How are you looking at this combo affecting your credit growth? I believe the finance minister also met you all. Do you think this year the credit growth will be much better? Last year, I think we are finishing at 9-10%, FY25. What is your sense of this?
Since our silent period started now, I can't.
I'm asking you about the sector.
We can't talk only about SBI, but I think in general, what are the preconditions for any economic growth? I think those things are being ensured fairly well in terms of ensuring that the system liquidity is adequate. And as you mentioned, CRR cut will add further liquidity to the system. Apart from the benefit of protecting the margins, which cost of funds are reduced. The other thing is that the upfronting the rate cut, these are all indication, signaling obviously is towards ensuring that the growth is on the higher pedal. I think this is
higher priority.
Higher priority. And the government of India's initiative of putting some extra money in the hands of people increase the consumption by reducing the rate of taxation.
You give me numbers for the banking sector, sir. I know I don't want to corner you on your silent period issue.
The banks will definitely come back to the credit growth.
You think we could do 13, 14? I don't know how well you remember the 2002 to 2004 period. Reserve Bank had cut rates from 15 to 8%. After the Pokhran, we had to raise our rates, and then Asian crisis brought it down dramatically. But credit growth didn't pick up for another 2 years. It remained at 10%. And then only in 2005, we see this 25% jump in credit. When it slows, takes time to grow. But now, do you think it can be faster?
I think it is. Stage is set in my view. Maybe a couple of quarters from here. One is the corporate credit has been a challenge for the last few quarters. It is mainly because they are all sitting on a
retained profit,
reasonable cash flow, cash availability to them. And I believe that a lot of brownfield expansion is undertaken by them is being taken by their own cash. That is also getting reflected. If you see the SME growth, we are all witnessing good growth in SME, which means that SMEs are basically B2B businesses, right? If the corporates are not giving the orders, they're not going to perform better. So which shows that the corporates are spending and also giving the orders to SME. But the next inflection point for the capital expenditure would have to come. One is most of them are operating at 75 to 76% capacity utilization. And a sustained consumer sentiment and consumption growth. It is not that it's not there, but I think people would like to see the sustained level of that.
You're saying that capex has not picked up, but it is looking all set to pick up.
All set.
What's your sense about margins? Again, for the sector, I'm not cornering you, because you're going to get this, the rate cut will take away your margins, but the CRR cut will give you back margins, and it comes with a multiplier. Every subsequent deposit will give you some gain. So will you come back to your FY25 margins in 4 quarters, 6, or for the banking sector? Does it take 4, 6 quarters to come back?
Most of the banks have indicated that it will be a kind of U curve for the NIMs that you will have. There is no rocket science in that.
Yes.
There's a lag of deposits getting repriced, whereas...
How much? Is it 2 quarters lag, 4 quarters?
No, I think we'll have to look at Q4 end state. And most of us probably would be sticking to our margins, the Q4 end state. That is what I can tell you.
I wanted to come to the the SBI history itself. As you cast back 70 years, I guess you would have been at least for 1/3 of that.
More than that.
Yeah, more than that. Okay. 35,
37.
Half the history you have seen. Any one memory or any few things that absolutely stand out?
If I have to, of course, there are many things.
Yes.
SBI, there's no dull moment in SBI that I keep telling that. But if two things which we have to see from an institutional perspective, not from individual perspective. I think the liberalization has completely given a new paradigm for SBI. Till that time, you're a dominant player. We still are a dominant player.
The deposit and lending rates were set by RBI.
Absolutely. And then you have new age players. Post-liberalization, you have new private
Bank
banks.
license.
Many things which have happened. My view, I think the watershed moment for banking as a whole and SBI in particular in the post-90s. It has given both opportunities and risks. We have completely had to remodel our risk management, that the global risk and your own internal economical risk which needed to be relooked at, while the opportunities were aplenty. So I think that is one. And the second important element, I think, for the country globally, I think unprecedented COVID was another thing what we really learned many things. It was an extreme business continuity process ensuring, right? You can't have a better testing of your BCB preparedness. I'm very proud that SBI has come out extremely well in terms of our commitment to customer.
Oh yes, not just that. Look at the quality of the balance sheet. Spite of going through a period when people could not go to work. I guess you have a historic low in terms of net NPAs now, 0.5% or less than that. That's quite a record. But since you say 1991, you all got listed in 1990, right? Now, will you use this 70th year to mark some listings? You already have 2 babies listed. Will more come?
The babies will, I think, have to still grow up. It will take some time.
So the market is kind. You're not likely to use
Not it.
all-time highs, very close. And what about SBI itself? You're not looking to use the market's good
We
mood.
did take the enabling resolution for QIP
That is
of
why I'm asking.
25,000 crores. I think while the timing is not decided, we have time up to March 26
Okay.
to launch this. Right.
So, again, let me ask you to, cast your mind back. What would you say were the most challenging for SBI? When did you all spend sleepless nights?
So, I don't think we spent sleepless nights because of, I think, crisis,
Maybe COVID.
crisis management inherent to us. Yes, I do agree. COVID was difficult, not because of any business environment. We had to protect the customers who are visiting our branches and more importantly, protect our staff. So if you really ask me from a management perspective, that was the most traumatic period which we all have gone through. And probably none of us have taken a day off except when we ourselves got infected by COVID.
Okay. What do you see as the advantages going forward because of digitalization? SBI had to bear the cost of putting a branch in a boathouse in Kashmir, in a probably an island off the coast of Kochi, or up in the peaks at Kargil. You have, I think in Natula you have a branch. You all have had to put these distant branches. Do you think branch costs will come down now because you can reach people digitally? Do you think sizes of branches will come down?
No, first of all, I don't think SBI ever looked at this obligation as a burden.
No, you didn't.
That also had helped us to have the reach, which is helping us to be a dominant player in deposits. First, that is what I wanted to say. But more importantly, 2 things what we are trying to do is, one is, of course, digitalization is going to help in reducing the cost and turnaround time. Today, we launched one business rule engine data-based SME lending platform. You would be surprised that approval is given in 40 minutes using the data. 40 minutes, which means that my operating people who are processing these loans can process more. So at the branch level, we have simplified the whole customer account opening journey. I keep saying that we open around 60,000 accounts every day. So when you're opening such large number, you have to cut down on our turnaround time. We used to take 3 to 4 hours to open the account, but on average it is now we are able to do it in 15 to 30 minutes. That means you can do more and you liberate your people to do various other activities. But what we are focusing is that how do you simplify the whole internal processes so that the customers can be served better? A lot of customer journeys have been reimagined. Today you can, do the fund transfer in 3 seconds, 4 seconds. But why is that at the branch level there are cumbersome processes? We want to completely reimagine the internal processes so that our, we call a project called operational process engineering, which will completely simplify the high volume business process.
But in that case, will you go down the path of unsecured loans? You are so confident of your digital data. Actually, the unsecured loans going bad, even in last year, when Reserve Bank blew the whistle, came as a surprise because we thought loans are being given by the entire banking sector on the basis of good digital data. Do you see now a chance of Reserve Bank lowering risk weights or banks themselves making more money on unsecured loans in the coming quarters?
No, I think the unsecured personal loans ecosystem looks better now, obviously. I don't think the risk weights will be reduced because it is only reinstated what was earlier the pre-COVID. But what do we see in the system is that the less delinquencies in the personal sector. I believe the system level, personal level loan growth will come back. It may not be 25-30% what we witnessed, but I think it will be a double-digit growth rate. But in our case, let me also tell your audience and
Yes.
you is that we are the largest personal loan provider in the country. With
In volume,
you never
yes.
said. So, which means that our data-based appraisal system has held on very well, and we have the lowest default rate in the personal
In
loans.
personal loans? Okay, that's good to hear. At the moment, what is the biggest loan growing category? I mean,
For the
what would
system-
you bet? Your guidance was 13% loan growth. Which would be the winning horses?
In our case, the growth comes from all segments. That's an advantage for SBI. We have several swim lanes. I keep saying that if one swim lane is not moving faster, we will go to another one. But I think it will be a broad-based credit growth. But for the system, I think home loans will continue to play an important role.
Okay, despite the fact that we hear real estate is speaking of, despite
In some markets, maybe. But I think overall, nationwide, I think the home loan
real
segment.
estate could be peaking off even because of commercial buildings.
Also because of the luxury segment, I think there will be more focus on the middle level segment and also affordable segment.
What's your going ahead? What do you see as the big challenge for SBI?
I did mention in terms of the challenges that how do you stay relevant, and when you are operating at scale, how do you manage your risk? I think this very important. A lot of people keep asking is that your profitability ratios are low and all. We have the largest number of people who are engaged in the risk and compliance management. When you have a scale of like, for example, we as on 31st March, we were 96 lakh crore business was managed by us, both advances and deposits together. 23,000 branches, 2,35,000 employees, which means that your aggregate risk can go out of hand if you do not have very robust risk management practices.
Fair point. What is your sense of, I mean, have you given your team a target for cost to income? Analysts will repeatedly tell you that your cost to income is higher than other banks.
So the effort is to reduce and moderate that. But as I mentioned, I think there's only so much we can reduce on the cost to income ratio because we have one of the most compliant organizations in the country, which means that we spend a lot of resources on the risk and compliance management. But broadly, I think we would like to maintain at the level what we had in 31st March.
Well, that's a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much indeed for coming to our studios to celebrate your birthday. And please take back a message from all of us, wishing every SBI very many happy returns and many, many more years of fruitful service to the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lata, for having me. Thank you.
Well, that's it on this very special edition of Economics. Thanks for Welcome Welcome to a State Bank of India special as the grand old bank celebrates its 70th birthday today. SBI is, of course, mini Indian economy, accounting for 20% of the country's bank credit, 22% of the country's bank deposits. 55 years ago, SBI was born when the Imperial Bank was converted into State Bank of India under the SBI Act. Since then, its deposits have grown, hold your breath, 25,500 times. Its profits in the latest year at 77,561 crores was 52,000 times what it was in 1955. When the nation is in trouble, it looks to SBI. At the height of the balance of payments crisis in 1991, SBI raised $1.6 billion through the India Development Bonds, and it repeated this feat again after a decade during the Pokhran nuclear test in 1998 when India faced sanctions. SBI personnel go on to head many other banks, S Bank included, and also staff the RBI and the SBI. There is a deputy governor over there. Most important, SBI has changed with the times. In its 50th year, the bank gave its younger competitor HDFC solid competition in home loans and actually won that competition. Today, with its YONO, it is competing with even fintechs. And on that celebratory note, may I welcome the birthday boy of the day, SBI Chairman, Mr. Challa Srinivasulu Sethi. Mr. Sethi, thank you very much for dropping into our studio on what must be a big day back home at SBI.
Thank you, Lata. It's a great moment for all of us. And I wanted to be in your studio to celebrate this occasion.
We are honored. We are honored.
And, I think the journey of SBI is also synonymous with the journey of India. I think to that extent, it's a great moment to celebrate.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you.
Actually, when SBI comes, one looks at the future. And so will our viewers. So just give us an idea. What are the immediate targets you have set the bank?
I don't call them targets, but we believe that if you have seen the journey of SBI, it always reimagined its role and stayed relevant. So we believe in SBI that going forward, while we have seen a lot of disruptions in the last 70 years, the disruptions will be much more frequent and much more deeper. So how do you handle these disruptions, particularly in terms of your business model, in terms of the service delivery, in terms of customer protection? I think we all want to focus making SBI ready for another maybe 200 years. This is what, so the center to this plan is our digital transformation journey. While we have, as you mentioned, the scale and we have the trust of the people, but the scale and trust alone will not make you the best and most preferred bank. So we would like to assure our customers and stakeholders that our investment in technology, digitalization continue so that the customer engagement with us will be much more seamless.
Well, actually, would you say that in the journey, in the 75 years, the government and the regulators' attitude to SBI and state-owned banks has changed? I mean, first, PSU banks after nationalization were part of the fisc. There was financial repression. But in 1991, you all were listed. SBI was listed first. And after that, more recently, I mean, the CRR cut, there is no big danger in front of the country. Till the CRR cut is given so that I think banks have a fair chance against mutual funds. Would you say the attitude is changing to give you all a fair chance?
See, the public sector banks are having a dominant market share.
Yeah.
Some of them would have lost the market share, but I think they're all trying to...
Collectively, 60%.
Collectively, we are the dominant players in the industry. Which means that any initiative, either by the government of India or by the regulator, cannot be meaningfully taken to the economy and the general public unless there is a wider participation of the public sector banks. I don't think there is any shift in the attitude, but one thing I can definitely tell you that maybe last 2-3 decades, or definitely in the current decade, is that we are getting a absolutely commercial banking approach in the public sector banks, and what I call ownership neutral approach towards serving the customers, and that is getting reflected. Obviously, the CRR cut is not meant for only.
You're getting a level playing field.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that has been the tone of the Reserve Bank, but I think banking sector, that is public sector and private sector, have got a better deal this year with liquidity being thrown in and the CRR cut. How are you looking at this combo affecting your credit growth? I believe the finance minister also met you all. Do you think this year the credit growth will be much better? Last year, I think we are finishing at 9-10%, FY25. What is your sense of this?
Since our silent period started now, I can't.
I'm asking you about the sector.
We can't talk only about SBI, but I think in general, what are the preconditions for any economic growth? I think those things are being ensured fairly well in terms of ensuring that the system liquidity is adequate, and as you mentioned, CRR cut will add further liquidity to the system. Apart from the benefit of protecting the margins, which cost of funds are reduced. The other thing is that the upfronting the rate cut, these are all indication, signaling obviously is towards ensuring that the growth is on the higher pedal. I think this is
higher priority.
Higher priority. And the government of India's initiative of putting some extra money in the hands of people increase the consumption by reducing the rate of taxation.
You give me numbers for the banking sector, sir. I know I don't want to corner you on your silent period issue.
The banks will definitely come back to the credit growth.
You think we could do 13, 14? I don't know how well you remember the 2002 to 2004 period. Reserve Bank had cut rates from 15 to 8%. After the Pokhran, we had to raise our rates, and then Asian crisis brought it down dramatically. But credit growth didn't pick up for another 2 years. It remained at 10%. And then only in 2005, we see this 25% jump in credit. When it slows, takes time to grow. But now, do you think it can be faster?
I think it is stage is set in my view, maybe a couple of quarters from here. One is the corporate credit has been a challenge for the last few quarters. It is mainly because they're all sitting on a
retained profit,
reasonable cash flow, cash availability to them. And I believe that a lot of brownfield expansion undertaken by them is being taken by their own cash. That is also getting reflected. If you see the SME growth, we are all witnessing good growth in SME, which means that SMEs are basically B2B businesses, right? If the corporates are not giving the orders, they're not going to perform better. So which shows that
With us right now is Union Telecom Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia. Thank you so much for joining us here on CNBC. In the last few days, you've also spoken about how the government does not want a duopoly in the telecom sector. Now, when it comes to the revival plans for Vodafone, what is on the government's agenda right now?
So first of all, I would like to correct your statement. I do not think a duopoly is healthy in any sector. And also within telecom, Parikshit, you'll understand that there are multiple verticals. My comment was at the Wi-Fi broadband International Wi-Fi Day, and my comment was in context with any vertical within the telecom sector. Be that as it may, as you have chosen the mobile vertical within the telecom sector, let me say this, that there are very few countries in the world that have 4 players within a particular market. And India happens to be one of those very few outliers in the world which has 4 players in the market. Each one of our players have upwards of 90 million subscribers or 100 million subscribers. Be it from BSNL at 91 million subscribers to Jio at 390 million subscribers. So across the whole range. I do believe that the amount of capex that has been put in the telecom sector in India stands out as a paragon across the world. Today, the telecom sector across the world is going through huge amounts of rationalization, and the return on capital employed across the sector, the world, has the numbers have been dipping very, very quickly. It's only in India that you're seeing a robust return on capital employed, which is why our telcos have deployed almost close to about 4.5 lakh crores, putting in place the 5G network in India. So whether it's the government-owned BSNL or any private sector company, it is for the management in these companies to decide on their strategy and their path to profitability. As far as BSNL is concerned, the department can only give them guidance, vision, strategy, inputs. Ultimately, it is the management of that particular company that delivers. And in our case, BSNL has seen a huge turnaround story, one that we are seeing today occurring after 18 years. To answer your question directly, as far as Vodafone is concerned, that is for the management and Vodafone to decide, and not for me as government to decide.
Right. But when it comes to further equity conversion, I think you've said earlier also that it's not as possible.
There cannot be. There possibly cannot be further equity conversion unless the government share gets diluted to lower than 49% to enable us to increase it back to 49%. Because we can't increase it beyond 49%, because the minute you do that, then it becomes a PSU,
right,
which is not our intent.
But are there other options being considered?
At this point of time, the equity option, increasing the equity option is not an option. As far as other options are concerned, there's not much discussion happening at this point. If there is, we will let you know.
Analysts have said that 2-year deferment of Vodafone AGR dues is the most possible thing that the government could do.
That is, as I said to you again, that is not for us.
will stand up for your health care, stand up for your Medicaid, stand up for your Medicare, stand up for the Affordable Care Act, stand up for nutritional assistance for our children, our seniors, and our veterans. Stand up for our hospitals. Stand up for our nursing homes. Stand up for our community-based health centers, and stand up against massive tax breaks for GOP billionaire donors. And that is why every single House Democrat will vote hell no against this one big, ugly bill. And all we need are 4 House Republicans to join us in defense of their constituents who will suffer mightily from this bill. Children will be hurt. Families will be hurt. People with disabilities will be hurt. Women will be hurt by what is an all-out assault on the health care of the American people. An unprecedented assault, ripping health care away from more than 17 million Americans. Premiums, copays, and deductibles for other people on private insurance will go up all across the country. Hospitals will close. Nursing homes will shut down. Community-based clinics will not have the ability to operate. And as a result, people are going to die connected to this one big ugly bill. Tens of thousands of unnecessary American deaths per year. Shame on Republicans for even bringing this bill to the House floor. So all we need are 4 Republicans to join us in support of their constituents, to have John McCain level courage and stand up in defense of the health care of the American people. What type of party would bring a bill to the House floor that rips away Medicaid from those in need? What kind of party would bring a bill to the House floor that literally robs food from the mouths of children, veterans, and seniors? And all of this is being done to provide massive tax breaks to their billionaire donors. It's unconscionable, it's unacceptable, it's un-American, and House Democrats are committing to you that we're going to do everything in our power to stop it. And all we need are 4 Republicans, just 4, to show John McCain level courage. Just 4. There are 220 of them. All we need are 4. And so all we have to do as the Congress is act in a manner consistent with the better angels of this country. Stand up for everyday Americans, not the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. That's what Republicans are doing in bringing this one big ugly bill to the House floor. Why would anyone vote for this dangerous and extreme bill? Why would Rob Bresnahan vote for this bill? More than 30,000 people would lose access to their health care in his community in Pennsylvania. Almost 60,000 households could lose access to food assistance in his community, at risk of going hungry. Why would Rob Bresnahan vote for this bill? Why would Scott Perry vote for this bill?